My name is Brian Bandas. I'm building a real estate development company. I'm becoming a better father, a better husband, a better entrepreneur, and a better man every single day. Let's get it. Guys, so check this out. So I made a reel this morning for my Instagram. By the way, if you don't follow me there, that's probably the best stuff. If you want more, Instagram, at Brian Bandas. So I made a reel this morning for my Instagram because I'm making an offer right now. Some of you may have seen it. I had more that I wanted to share. It was too much to throw on an Instagram reel or an Instagram story. Here's what I want to share. So the first thing is I'm writing an offer this morning for a lot in East Nashville. It's going to be two unit build. And let me just run down the numbers real quick for you just because I want to teach you guys and share with you about real estate development. So here's what I'm looking at. I've got a target deal that I think I've shared with you on here, and that is basically $100,000 in potential profit per unit. So not necessarily per project, but per unit. So with this one, with 2 units, I want $200,000. And the way I break that up right now is out of the $100,000, $25,000 build fee goes to my construction company, and then $75,000 is left for profit for me and potentially investors if they're in on it to split. So this deal I'm looking at is a slightly higher price point, and I've got a slightly higher profit margin. I've got a $40,000 build fee and between $90,000 and $100,000 in net profit per unit, potentially. The other big thing is that we've got comps, not just nearby, but literally a couple houses down on the exact same street. So we know they're very trustworthy. And they just sold within the last few months for around 1.2 million. Now, we know that the market is changing, and I would use the word softening. I would not use the word crashing until I see more evidence that it's crashing. It's not 2008. It's not the same conditions, market conditions. We don't have the same lending problems, etc. I don't foresee a crash. And this is maybe what I'll talk about in the second part of this video. I already made a video on market conditions and what I see, but what I'll talk about in a minute is the difference between sort of natural market conditions, supply and demand, and unnatural market conditions, or things that would affect the market, like sort of levers that outside forces can pull. So we'll come back to that. What I know is that the market is softening, even though we still have a supply and demand issue. The market's softening. So instead of using 1.2 million, which was at the top, and for those of you who are in a city like Nashville where things were going really nuts, I mean, you were seeing people pay $50,000, $100,000 more than something was worth just to be able to buy it. So if the place was worth $1 million, everybody was going to come in and offer $1 million, and whoever offered 1.1 or 1.15 or whatever would pay that extra premium just to get to be the one to buy it, right? That was the friggin' ticket price just to play. So what I did was, when I made this pro forma, I knocked it down to $1 million sales price. So I know that if our sales price goes for this exact same, I use the exact same size as those, same styles, same types of finishes, all of that. So I know that if I could sell those for 1.2, if I now sell this for $200,000 less than those comps at 1 million, I still really like the deal. So I decided to go ahead and pull the trigger on it. I played with the numbers a good amount. Here's what I wanted to talk to you about. I feel nervous this morning writing this offer. The offer is actually written. I'm about to sign it and send it over. I know the agent who brought it to me. I've worked with her a long time. In fact, she's a Deal Architect member, by the way. And she's starting to get into development. She's got 2 $1 million listings. You know, let's call it a year and a half from now. She brings it to me. And I'm telling you guys, no matter how much I do the numbers, and I like them, they make sense. I've been cautious. I've been cautious on my build cost. I've been reasonably cautious on my sales price, all of it. I still feel nervous. I'm here to tell you guys, even with almost $300,000 between build fees and profit on the 2 units, I still feel nervous. I still have to contend with fear right now. And so I'm going to tell you guys, I don't know if that's ever going to go away. I have felt nervous pretty much every single time that I've written an offer and started a project, because there's the possibility that I'm wrong. I don't know the future. And if, our country completely collapses or ends up in a war or whatever, I'm potentially screwed, right? We all might be. None of us can control the future. So I have two options: freeze and not do anything, or move forward with wisdom and prudence to the best of my ability and continue to take action in spite of that fear. And you guys, if you follow me on Instagram, maybe I've said it on here too, I say that all the time. You take action in spite of fear. Now, here's what I will say. I didn't take hasty action in spite of fear. I took calculated risk. I took intelligent action in spite of fear. But what I'm saying is the fear is there to tell me that this is important, and that's it. Eventually, I move forward in spite of it. Because that fear doesn't mean don't do it, automatically don't do it. If you feel fear, it's a bad idea. That's not true. It's absolutely not true. And I think most great things that have been done in history have been done in the presence of fear, not in the absence of fear. So I wanted to make a video to tell you guys that 60, 70 projects in, I'm nervous right now. I'm writing an offer. I don't know the future. In particular, the market seems to be changing, and it's particularly unpredictable because no matter how well I understand supply and demand, you have these outside forces like the Fed changing interest rates, or maybe lenders changing their policies, etc. I can't control all that. My only other option besides making intelligent decisions and informed decisions, I do my research, I run my numbers, I do more research, I run more numbers, and at some point, there's no more research to do. At some point, there's no more numbers to run. I've run them 3 or 4 times just to make sure that I forget something, that I miss something, that I underestimate my carrying costs, that I underestimate my build costs, etc. And at some point, I have run those numbers into the ground, and it's over, and there's a decision to be made. And decisiveness is so powerful because once I write this offer and accept it, I've made my bed. And now it's time to problem solve, because I'm going to own this property and I'm going to have to figure out how to make sure it's profitable no matter what happens. And so part of the ability to be decisive when you feel fear is to trust your future self and go, I believe that when some problem comes up, because it will, I'll be able to figure out how to make this work. I will be able to problem solve. I am a professional problem solver, as you guys know. So that is what I wanted to share with you, because if you're looking at doing this, if you're watching me on YouTube or me on Instagram because you think real estate development is awesome, first of all, you're right, it's the bomb. And second of all, you're probably not going to be able to do it with no fear. That's what's beautiful about it, though, is I am stronger than I've ever been before because I'm continuing to train myself to take action and do things in spite of the fact that it's a little bit scary. I'm teaching myself that fear does not stop me. Fear is not a stop sign. Maybe it's a yield. Maybe it's a warning, a caution sign that says, hey, just pay attention. So I do. I pay attention. I run my numbers. I'm cautious. I'm wise. And then I pull the trigger and I move forward anyway. And that's what I want to encourage you to do. At some point, you've done your research and you got to make a decision. Make the decision. The decision doesn't have to be yes. Plenty of these, I run the numbers, I'm like, I don't feel good enough, and my decision is no. And it's the same deal. If I find out a year later somebody bought it for the price that I passed on, they made a bunch of money, great. I'm not going to beat myself up because I'm going to go, you know what? I made the decision and I'm going to live with it. All right, so just know that if you want to do this, if you want to develop real estate, and frankly, if you want to build a business of any kind and do anything of substantial value, of meaningful, lasting value, you want to do something big, there's going to be fear. The fear is not a stop sign. The fear is there. The fear is there to guide you, to help you, to protect you. And at some point you say, thank you for your protection, fear. I got it from here. All right, so I mentioned I would talk to you guys briefly about the idea of natural market conditions versus sort of unnatural market conditions. These are my words. These are not, a lot of you guys know me and know my story. You're getting to know it. I don't have a MBA, right? I don't have formal business schooling. I've got no college degree of any kind. Sometimes that bothers me, and sometimes I take great pride in that. So these are just my opinions, and especially the language I'm going to use. This is just my language. So here's how I would describe it. In Nashville specifically, we are underbuilt. We have low supply and high demand. Nationally, though, we have some, I would call them unnatural influencing factors. One of those is, what does the Fed do with interest rates? Interest rates do not fix the issues that we have with low supply and high demand. They don't change that. And yet, sort of in an unnatural way, meaning they just decide to do it, it's not a natural result of anything. It's them deciding to specifically manipulate the markets. That can change how the market behaves. And what's really challenging is, based on natural things, I can predict what the market would do. If I knew the Fed wasn't going to touch interest rates, or large media outlets weren't going to scream recession and scare everyone, if I knew that wasn't going to happen, I could pretty accurately predict how the market in Nashville is going to go over the next 1, 3, 5 years. However, I don't know that. And so that's what's got me being extra cautious right now, is no matter how much I look at supply and demand and I understand what those indicate, I don't know what these unnatural external forces are going to do. Let's just pretend, in an extreme example, the Fed raises rates tomorrow to 20%. I mean, that's going to kill the real estate market no matter what supply and demand looks like in Nashville, right? It's over. I can't really control that. Now, that seems unlikely. So I have to, rather than freeze because something bad could happen, I have to just make the most intelligent decisions I can. We talked about it in that market video, boom, boom, right there, which is, man, buy right, buy aggressively, trim the fat on my, on my company's overhead, so I can make intelligent adjustments, but I can't predict the future. So those are some examples. In my opinion, those are the two main examples of these sort of big, sort of artificial external factors that could mess with the market. And that is, what's the Fed doing with interest rates, and what does the sort of national media, and this isn't a political conversation, but what does the national media say? If the national media is screaming recession fear, it's going to have some effect. Some people are going to respond with fear, and they're going to start responding like it's a recession. And to a degree, that creates a recession, right? So I have to be as intelligent as possible and continue to move forward and take action, because it's how I feed my family, and just be as wise as I can. That's what I mean when I talk about these external factors. And here's the interesting thing. When I find myself making this offer this morning, the question I'm asking myself is really a philosophical question, because it's going to take me a year and a half from now, in theory. I mean, our closing date is almost 2 months from now. So if it takes me 12 to 14 months to build and close the deal, then it's going to be a year and a half from today by the time I'm actually selling this thing. Or let's call it 14 months by the time I'm actually selling that project. So over that time, either the natural market conditions will eventually win out, which is supply and demand, and enough people just want to buy houses and our demand is low. Either that will win, or that will capitulate. That is a $1 million word right there, capitulate. Or the natural market forces will sort of succumb to the artificial market forces of fear-mongering and interest rate manipulation. So when I am buying this property, even as cautious as I'm being on the buy, I'm really sort of making a philosophical decision. I believe ultimately long-term, those real-life market conditions, those natural market conditions and market forces of supply and demand will win out over time. I also sort of think that the Fed, which is probably the stronger influence of those artificial things, I think that given the opportunity, they'll back off and chill out a little bit. We'll see. So for me, making the offer today, it's a little bit of a philosophical bet. And my bet is that natural market forces win out in the long run. Hope I'm right. We'll see. So in the previous part of the video, I was wearing a sweatshirt. You might have seen it. It says Helton right here. If you go back to my really early videos, I talked about leaving a really great job, and that was working with who is the guy who's my best friend, Alex Helton, and it was his company that I worked for. Great job. Loved working with him. He's an amazing person. He's somebody that I really respect personally and professionally. He's been in real estate a long time and he gets it. And so this offer that I'm working on. It's interesting because Alex had a shot at this same offer, and based on the market and how he feels about it, decided to pass. And so that's a really interesting experience for me, because here's this person who, you know, especially professionally, even though we're friends and peers, professionally has almost been a mentor to me. For me to decide, I at least very slightly disagree. I think the deal is good enough and I like what's happening over there and I'm gonna go for it. That's a really uncomfortable situation for me. I don't think his opinion is that this deal is a disaster. His confidence that it's a big win isn't high enough. And that's a really interesting moment for me. And I think there's some real value there. It goes back to the idea of like, man, at some point I've gotten enough opinions, I've done enough research, and I have to make a decision and live with it. And if I make this decision and I'm wrong and I break even, or let's say I'm so wrong that I have to spend $50,000 just to sell this thing, at some point I have to make the decision and live with it and maximize the situation that I'm in once the decision's made, and that's all I can do. But I thought it was worth noting that I was wearing that sweatshirt that I have now had for a decade, and it is like one of the softest pieces of clothing that I own. There's some real tension for me in deciding that I trust myself and my experience and my interpretation of things enough to disagree with this person who I highly, highly respect and make my own decisions and sort of make my own way. Now, I'm not saying, you know, to ignore wisdom. I'm not saying to ignore wisdom. I'm saying to gather wisdom and seek wisdom and gather insight, but at some point, you have to transition from research to decision. My decision was, I'm gonna keep moving forward. I think I feel pretty good about this deal. I've built in X, Y, and Z to make it work. We'll see who was right at the end of the day. Maybe he and I should bet. We'd have to figure out what the stakes are. Maybe he and I should bet, like, if it does end up being a good deal, he owes me a steak dinner. And if it doesn't, while I'm filing bankruptcy, I can buy him a steak dinner. All right, here is a project that I haven't had a chance to show you guys yet over in East Nashville. 4 townhouses going up. Just sort of like, here's a garage and a little guest suite. We'll go upstairs and we'll check this place out. Just got this framed up. Unfortunately, we got our building permits and we were all clear, and all of a sudden NES said, hey, you're too close to the power lines, you gotta stop. We're already framed up, so man, this is gonna be cool though. Big ol' open living room, kitchen, balcony of sorts right here. I think a Juliet balcony if I remember correctly. Upstairs now, some good outdoor space. It's gonna be nice, man. It's gonna be great. Sorry for all the noise. It's because we're doing work, baby, making moves. These have been the most problematic project I've had yet as a developer. We've actually had this land for a couple years. Really had to work through, jump through some hoops with everything from our surveying and site plan to now this with the electric company, and to some problems with our stormwater plan and what they were expecting for us. So it has taken an inordinate amount of time to work through those problems, and that is a tiny little takeaway for those of you getting into development. Part of the reason that's been okay is because of the character of my partners. They understand, and also because of the financial situation of my partners. So I partnered up with guys who have enough liquidity that while they don't like what's happening, it's not devastating to them. They can carry some costs for a little while. Fortunately, we actually didn't have a down payment at the time that we purchased this, so we haven't had as much capital tied up, but so crucial to pick the right partners, to pick people with the right character, the right personality, people who are gonna be able to roll with the punches, and people with a balance sheet that allows them to roll with the punches. Oh my gosh, guys. Professional problem solver. That, you know what? I don't even know if I'm professional problem solver. As some days I'm just professional emotion regulator for myself. I just got some very disappointing news on that 4 townhouses that we were talking about with the electric company. Basically, I'm gonna have to pay out of my pocket to put 2 new very large electrical poles in. I don't know what it's gonna cost. It's probably gonna wipe out, we got 4 townhouses. I'll bet that'll eat up the majority of the profit from one of the 4. Here's why I share that with you guys. because I think it's easy to watch people online, on YouTube and Instagram, wherever, and they're all talking about how great things are going and showing their success. And I do feel successful and I do like what I'm doing, but I want you guys to see and know that, like, day to day, it is work, man. I have days where I get discouraged. I have days where I get bad news. I have projects like this one where I don't know if there's any other way to know this ahead of time except to learn it the hard way like this, which is right at the beginning of the project, I could have called NES and said we might be too close, and we could have designed our site plans around that. I didn't know. Now I know. It's costing me money. It's an expensive lesson. Man, I wanted to share this because you guys need to know, whoever it is out there, whether it's freaking Gary V or Ed Milet or me building houses in Nashville, whoever's out there doing something, building something, trying to accomplish something, there is not a single person out there doing that where it's going great for them every day. They are having rough days, they're getting bad news, and I just wanted to share mine, because now my job is to identify how to regulate my emotions and be purposeful in my response to the situation. That's the best I can do.